The best model of leadership is the model that works for you. The 3 steps to growth is always going to be first, study others. Second, mix and match from the others you've studied. And third, then it's invent your own system. The best artists are those who typically rely on the creative imagination. And this is what is otherwise known as the sixth sense, right? So you have to invent your own methodology at some point in how you want to lead your life and your business. And until you get clear on that, all of the books you read are really just systems that you can pick and choose from. And the goal is to then create your own methodology for thinking, your own methodology for decision making, your own methodology for managing and leading. What's up? Welcome to another edition of the Bill Hauser Podcast. And I'm going to pull up my top 50 book list right now. We're going to talk about how most of what the business world, entrepreneur world teaches you is really just bullshit, and it's all just mental masturbation about stuff that sounds good to say, but in reality is not the way that companies are run. All right, so there's a lot of books out there that claim that there's some magical model to how to be an entrepreneur, how to be a leader, how to run a company, start a company. And most of the information out there is designed to fit a societal narrative around how being like perfect would be, if that makes any sense. So if you think about what the perfect leader, perfect entrepreneur, perfect CEO would be, okay, they would treat their team well. They would never criticize their team. They would always be prepared. They would always make calculated decisions. They would always compliment their team in public and criticize them in private. And they'd never make mistakes on that. They would set perfectly structured goals all the time and, communicate those goals in a big open setting and everyone applauds and goes, "Oh, I love my leader. This is an amazing leader. Oh my God." And I'm here to tell you that based on my reflections of reading literally hundreds of business books, some of the best books written by the best leaders of all time, that there is a stark difference between what management theory is and how you actually like entrepreneur theory and practice-based entrepreneur feedback and reality around entrepreneurship and being a leader. And I'm going to break the kind of myths around that in today's podcast, because it really pisses me off when I see people embodying a false narrative, living a false reality and studying a false reality. So when you look at books, first of all, the Elon biography, Steve Jobs biography, you look at the greatest kind of innovators of all time, even multiple of the Bezos biographies that have been written, you're going to notice that these people are not studying someone else's way of leadership. They're all inventing their own leadership model. Charles Koch, multi-billionaire, he invented his own management system. You look at Jack Welch, one of the greatest CEOs of all time. He created his own management system. If you look at, he was the CEO of GE. You look at high output management, Andy Grove, right? One of the greatest CEOs of all time. He invented his own management system. You look at someone like Bezos, for example. He requires, at the beginning of Amazon meetings, I don't know if it's still the same because I don't think he's CEO anymore, but when Bezos was CEO of Amazon, everyone would enter a room but for a meeting, right? And you would have to literally read sometimes like 10 to 15 page, sometimes 30 page long briefs at the beginning of the meeting. So imagine this. Imagine entering a meeting and everyone is silent it's an hour-long meeting, and everyone is silent for 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, reading the brief that was written as the intention and purpose and agenda of the meeting, right? So someone like, Bezos has his own unique model of holding meetings. Jeff Bezos doesn't like holding meetings after, noon or early afternoon, because he believes that his brain function, as it does for most people, your glycogen in your brain goes down after midday from waking up. So he doesn't want to make decisions until the next morning rather than holding later meetings throughout his day. So he'd rather have an early morning meeting. There's other people who prefer to have late day meetings so that they can get their important focus work done in the morning, right? There's other people like Elon who like having meetings literally at 1 a.m. whenever the hell they want, right? When you look at all these different models and leadership styles, it's very quick to understand that the best model of leadership is the model that works for you, right? That's the model that works best, because as soon as you're operating outside of your own patterns and your own natural abilities, that's when people see you as a disingenuine leader and as someone they don't want to follow, because, you haven't found your own way yet. Now, in order to get to a place where you can actually have the self-confidence to follow your own voice and your own way of leading, to get to that point requires following other people's leadership methods, right? If you were born in a box, okay, and you were trapped in that box until age 25, and you had earplugs in and blindfolds on for, 25 or 30 years of your life, and then you come out of that box and you enter the world, you would not know how to communicate. You would not know how to speak English or whatever language the country you're from speaks. You wouldn't know how to lead. You wouldn't have any of these skills because you would have learned nothing from other human beings for 25 to 30 years if you were locked in a box from birth, right? So what does that tell us? That tells us that all learning, especially in the early stages, happens through other people. In order to learn something, you have to learn from another human being in some way, whether that's through written word, whether that's through video, whether that's through in-person mentorship. Learning happens through others, right? So with the absence of others, it's very hard to learn. So when you're getting started in leadership, business, or entrepreneurship, it's really hard to just learn on your own and not have learned anything from anyone else along your path. It's way faster to learn from other people. And that's why the first step of finding kind of your own leadership voice and your own entrepreneurial voice, the first step is to study others, right? Then the second step is to mix and match. So the second step is, like, let's say you've learned from 5 different people on how to lead, how to run your business, right, etc. You take from those 4 or 5 people that you learn the most from, and you kind of mix and match. You say, I like this stuff from this person. This also applies to any artistic-based skill, right? So acting, comedy, art, anything, right? Any of the creative arts, sports, right? You'll find the same exact thing, right? If you're a wide receiver, you're going to learn from a couple key, an offensive line coach who have a big impact on your life. He'll say the most important thing is to run to the ball under all circumstances. Then you'll go 2 years later, you have another offensive coach, and that coach will say, the most important thing is da-da. Then you'll have a stellar wide receiver you play against in college, and that wide receiver teaches you, it's all about this and this, right? And then you mix and match, right? And from all these mentors and people you learn from to create your own method, which is step 3 for becoming the greatest wide receiver you can be, becoming the greatest artist you can be, becoming the greatest business person you can be. So the 3 steps to growth is always going to be: first, study others; second, mix and match from the others you've studied; and third, then it's invent your own system, right? So don't skip to invent your own system before you've studied others and you've mixed and matched from others, because the way that you create your own system is through the mixing and matching. So like in business, some of the books that had a big impact on me first was Think and Grow Rich. That book had huge impact on my life, changed everything I knew about. This is even before I started my own business. The book Think and Grow Rich taught me how to command what I want from the universe, right? Through auto-suggestion, and how to set crystal clear goals, command those goals to the universe, repeat those goals to myself out loud consistently until I'm blue in the face, right? Until everyone around me is sick of those goals. That's what Think and Grow Rich told me, how to will my existence, will my goals into existence, right? Then I went through some challenges in my life, and I learned about this principle called the power of now. That book taught me mindfulness. That taught me how to not always will things into existence, but also how to accept things as they are, right? And the blend of these two principles really became a lot of my leadership identity, is by mixing and matching these two principles, willing things into existence, but also having the humility to accept what is, and to, as a result, be happy with things, whereas, most people as leaders are perpetually dissatisfied, right? I'm able to be happy because I root my beliefs in the present moment, in the now, and everything that exists in the present, right? Another book that had a huge impact on my life was the 10X Rule, Grant Cardone. That book told me about the importance of setting huge, unreasonable targets that are unachievable in this lifetime, right? And that book changed my life. That book had a huge impact. And that was another big thing that I pulled from a separate mentor of mine. Another book that had a really big impact on my life was the 80-20 Principle, Richard Koch. That book taught me to focus on the 20% of inputs that produce 80% of outputs in your life, right? So when you look back over your life, you see these foundational principles that, if you're a learner, by the way, there is no mixing and matching. If you don't learn, it's impossible to mix and match from what you learn, because if you don't learn anything, there's nothing to mix and match, right? So this all, like, the minimum requirement of growth in this formula is that you're constantly learning, right? So for me, like, my identity really was stemmed by an amalgamation, a compilation of all these different key principles that I learned from others, right? And what happens is when you learn so much through others, you mix and match, then you start you're able to test other people's approaches constantly, right? And within those testing of other people's approaches, you're able to kind of identify what works best with you, what kind of doesn't work great with you. And within that, you kind of form your own method for leading a company, leading your life, leading your art, whatever it is you do. And over time, this is what makes you authentically a leader in your life, because you're not following anyone else's playbook when you become authentic. So this is what, some people call the creative imagination. In the book Think and Grow Rich, they talk about this. The best artists are those who typically rely on the creative imagination. And this is what is otherwise known as the sixth sense, right? When you're able to kind of rely on gut feeling more than a perfect prescription, right? And gut feeling, keep in mind, is never really gut feeling. Like, there's been studies done on this. Gut feeling, in a lot of cases, unless it's fear-based, gut feeling is often the most accurate decision-making method for people who are experienced in business or entrepreneurship, because if you are experienced in business or entrepreneurship, you've been through a lot of stuff, you've read a lot of books, you've had a lot of mentors, so the chances are when you're experienced and you've succeeded, your gut feeling is more likely to be right because of your life experiences that have led up to this point in time, right? I remember when I first learned some of the principles in the book Principles by Ray Dalio. And one of the key principles I took away from that book is the importance of root cause diagnosis, right? one thing that was a terrible habit, still is, it's a bad habit of mine as a leader and as a CEO, is jumping to conclusions. It's like so easy to jump to conclusions when you have a strong imagination, you have a million ideas a minute. Super easy to jump to conclusions, right? And my partner Andy always says, easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life, right? So there's an inverse relationship. If you make a hard choice in the morning, i.e. go to the gym, you're going to have an easy life if you go to the gym every morning, make that hard choice every morning. If you make the easy choice every morning, sleeping in, not working out, then you'll have a hard life later on by taking easy choices every morning, right? So it's easy when you're someone like me to come up with 1,000,001 solutions to a problem, right? It's actually hard for me to bite my tongue and identify the root cause of the problem and really do a thorough diagnosis of the problem, right? And that was one of my biggest takeaways from the book Principles, was how do I become more patient in my decision making so that when I decide on something, it is the right thing. There are so many people that trap themselves in their lives, myself included, for making decisions when not looking at all of the data. Like, I'll give you an example of how we just did this in our own company. So over the last week, we've had the holidays, and we've had a little bit more quiet time, and it's allowed me to do very deep analysis on parts of our company that I've wanted to innovate around. So it's so funny, like a few weeks ago, and I reread Principles, and that's why, by the way, this is another very important thing I've learned. I hope it's valuable, because it's been very valuable for me, is it's more important to reread a great book than it is to read a new book. Once you've identified a excellent, great book or a great piece of information, it's better to reread it than it is to go on to a new piece of information and to risk yourself of being brainwashed by bad information. So that's like just a tip I've learned, is go back and reread the greats before you go read something new, because chances are you're not implementing 1/100th of what you've already learned from the greats. Okay, so I reread the book Principles a few weeks ago, had some time during the holidays, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm not doing enough root cause diagnosis. Reread this other book called Amp It Up, Frank Slootman, and the book is like shouting to me about the importance of having clear priorities, and talks about the way you get clear priorities is through diagnosis and slowing down to make decisions. So here I am facing this area of the business that I really want to innovate around, and what does Bill do? Like a dumbass, I come up with 1,000,001 ideas, right? Oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. And that's not the best way to come up with solutions. Instead, it's better to ask yourself, what problem am I looking to solve? Until you're clear on the problem you want to solve, you shouldn't go into a solution. You shouldn't brainstorm. You shouldn't create an action list. You should make sure you're clear on the problem first. Being clear on the problem is the actual key, right, to having great ideas. That is the key. So I looked at this area of our business that I wanted to improve, and what I ended up doing was I ended up taking client feedback from over 100 clients of ours, right? So we went through our CRM, we took emails from them, we took feedback from them, we took AI call transcriptions that our team had with them. We compiled all this information together in ChatGPT, and we asked ChatGPT, hey, analyze these 100 clients' piece of feedback about blah, 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 and tell me what is their number one problem, and what are the top 5 solutions based on that number one problem that we should implement, right? And it was a perfect example of how slowing down and getting crystal clear on what is the right problem to solve for can have literally a transformational impact on your life. So my point in sharing this is that most of what you learn in business leadership, entrepreneurship is wrong because it can't ever work for you until it works for you, if that makes any sense. You have to invent your own methodology at some point in how you want to lead your life and your business. And until you get clear on that, all of the books you read are really just systems that you can pick and choose from. And the goal is to then create your own methodology for thinking, your own methodology for decision making, your own methodology for managing and leading, right? So the other side of this I want to talk about is like the not pretty side of management and leadership, right? When you look at, and I mentioned this earlier, books like the Elon biography, the Jobs biography, multiple Bezos biographies that exist out there, not only do they do things their own way, but they also are not easy to work for, right? They're not easy to work with, and that's why they are change disruptors in their marketplaces, right? That's why they created change, right? Is because they're abrasive. They don't fit. They're the square peg in the round hole, right? They don't fit in society as well as a normal person, and that is what their companies reflect. They're creating new things because they as people don't really fit in that well, and they're creating businesses that reflect that in some ways. So, okay, being polite to every member of your team, is that always possible when you're trying to create change? Being polite with everyone? No. It's impossible to be polite all the time. It's impossible to attend to everyone's feelings 24/7, 365. It's impossible to be liked 24/7, 365. But the question you got to ask yourself is, are you optimizing for being liked, or are you optimizing for impact, right? If you're optimizing for being liked, then you should do more things that get you liked. If you're optimizing for creating an impact, then you're going to have to speak out against the things that aren't working in those that you work with. You're going to have to speak out and be uncomfortable and tell people, hey, there's ketchup on your shirt. If you don't get that ketchup off your shirt, it's going to be on you all day. So you should get that off now. How many people do you pass by or have lunch with and you see something come up on their mouth as they're eating food and you never say anything about it, right? Most people don't bring it up because it's uncomfortable, especially when there's a lot of people at the dinner table or you're out to dinner with some friends. It's uncomfortable to shout out to someone, hey, you have something on your mouth. You should wipe that off. It's not comfortable to say that. But do you want that person to have 1 minute of discomfort having to deal with your direct feedback to them? Or would you rather them put up with 2 hours of discomfort not knowing that there's something hanging out of their teeth in the middle of dinner and everyone stares at it for 2 hours? So always remember this. When you don't want to give negative feedback to someone, it says more about your selfishness to preserve your own emotional well-being than it does your care for that other person. Like, you not giving harsh feedback to someone is you being selfish. You don't want to deal with the emotional whiplash of that. You don't want to deal with the emotional repercussions of that. That means you're protecting your own emotions. That is a selfish desire. And instead, you tell yourself, oh, it's just being nice. That's why I didn't tell the person that. No, you're being selfish. You're preserving the emotional backlash that would come from you telling the person something that doesn't feel great to say. That's radical transparency. That is not comfortable, but it's essential. Tim Ferriss once said that the quality of your life will be in direct proportion to the quantity of uncomfortable conversations that you have, right? That is such a good saying, because you don't get what you want in life. You get what you negotiate. You get what you ask for. And more importantly, you get what you deserve, right? So the deserve it factor is a real thing. Like, if you don't deserve to be in shape based on what you do in the gym and what you eat every day, you're not going to be in shape. Doesn't matter if you want it, right? If you don't deserve it, you're not going to be in shape. And what's important is, like, understanding you're not going to be liked all the time. All these books that say, like, how to win friends and influence people. Oh, you can always make the other person feel like it was their idea. No, that's not true. Unless you want to move really slowly and have every conversation you have with others be some long, articulate, long, drawn out thing. No, sometimes you have to say, hey, this is going to be what needs to happen. It's not comfortable. It's direct. And when you look at some of these great leaders who have created huge change, you're going to realize it's not all pretty. It's not all perfect communication. Next thing, there's not reasonable timelines set by any change maker. Okay? If you studied people who have made change in society, they are always setting up crazy deadlines that never perfectly get met. They're setting deadlines that nobody can meet. That's because their standards are so freaking high, they refuse to lower their standard. So this is like the whole like Elon thing where he kept saying like, we're going to have self-driving in 1 year. 1 year comes, he's like, we're going to have self-driving in 1 year. Someone calls him out in the audience and says, hey, you told us last year you're going to have it. Yeah, we'll have it in 1 year. Another year goes by. We're going to have self-driving in 1 year. Someone else says, oh, you told us that last year. It's been 3 years now. Next year, we're self-driving 1 year. 4 years have gone by. He's been saying it's been self-driving 1 year. Like, hello, are you listening to this? Like, most of the leaders that are creating change in society, they don't have a perfect understanding of deadlines and timelines for the change they want to create. That's okay. No management book, most management books out there, except for the 10X rule, most management books are going to say, oh, you should set SMART goals. You should set reasonable deadlines for everything. F that. You should set unreasonable deadlines. Okay? You should set deadlines that scare the crap out of your team, that make people doubt that it's possible. And you're never going to see that in a management book. You're going to see that from people who have made hundreds of millions of dollars, but you're not going to see it in a traditional management book based on Harvard MBAs creating the strategy. Oh, people need to feel safe in the workplace. People need to feel a little bit of fear in the workplace. If everyone just feels perfectly safe, I mean, that's the whole fat and happy concept, right? No, people need to feel a little bit of fear and a little bit of excitement. And the merge of those two things is the magic concoction. But not everyone should feel safe in an organization 100% of the time. They should feel safe to speak their mind. They should feel safe to work with people that they trust and that are at their level in the capacity, intellectually safe. But if you don't perform in an organization, you shouldn't just feel safe. Oh, everyone's just gets participation trophies here. No, absolutely not. Another thing that's super important is understanding that picking up the pace is like a really hard art to conquer, and it's not pleasant, right? So like if everyone just took like a management theory approach to change, every goal would be reasonable. Every goal would be like a perfect timeline and deadline, and everything would take years and years to get done, right? Picking up the pace is not pleasant, right? You can set high standards. You can set deadlines that aren't sexy. You can scare your team a little bit with crazy high expectations. But at some point, if things aren't working to your expectations personally, professionally, you've got to raise the intensity and pick up the pace and force things to happen quickly and be a change agent, right? And there's almost no books talking about this because it's uncomfortable. Being a change agent is a surefire way to have some people complain about you and criticize how you're treating them and stuff like that. Like, picking up the pace is such an important skill for being a leader, and nobody talks about it. And it's like literally the most important thing. Like, if you talk to any 100 million plus net worth individual, 100% of them, okay, and I spend time with these people, 100% of them will tell you picking up the pace, the organizational pace, is one of the most important things. Things that other companies take a year to get done, your company should get done in 1 week. Or screw it. Let's get it done in one day. Let's get it done in 30 minutes, right? Compressing time is the key. They say time kills deals in sales. Time kills growth in business, right? The more time it takes you to get something done, the more likely a competitor is going to swoop in and steal your business and eat your lunch, right? So fast execution is the key. That's what I mean by speeding it up, picking up the pace, creating a fast execution pulse in everything that you do. Yes, you're going to make more mistakes, but here's the beautiful thing. The faster you make mistakes, the faster you learn what not to do in the future. If you never make mistakes, if every plan is perfect, then you don't make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn what not to do in the future. So there is no such thing as a perfect plan. Last thing I'll comment on, and a lot of this was inspired by the book Amp It Up, which is freaking amazing. But another, like transforming your strategy. Like everyone talks about strategy, and in layman's terms, what's strategy? It's having the right plan, right? If you were to ask 1 million people, when are you going to start your business, right? People who want to start their own business, they're going to say, oh, when the time's right, or when I have the this, or when I have the that, or when I have the this, right? That's strategy, right? That's like, oh, I need all my chips in order. I need a perfect strategy, perfect plan. Then I'll get started, right? If most people who even allow that thought to go through their mind are not entrepreneurs. Like if you have entrepreneurship in your blood, you would never tolerate a thought like that. Like when I started SMB team, it was snap of a finger. I quit my job. I almost made $300,000 my first year, 24 years old, in a sales job. And it was a 5-second decision. It was, I'm quitting and I'm starting my own business. There was no plan B. There was no plan it out. There was no, oh, let me do a side hustle. I've never had a side hustle in my life. Not once. It's just like, if you were to just make one commitment, to be great at one thing, that is the hardest commitment to make because then you shut off other opportunities, right? The commitment to be great at one thing is hard because most people have opportunity addiction. Most people have greener pastures in their mind. Like, oh, grass is greener here, grass is greener there, grass is greener there. And every time you spend 1 ounce of effort on something outside of your main thing is time wasted from you becoming the best you can possibly be at that one thing. Now, the only exception I put there is for outlets, right? Every successful person needs an outlet. Again, if you're to interview dozens of people who are making over $100 million a year, you're going to notice most of them have outlets and they're obsessed with their outlets, as obsessed as they are with their main thing. But they're not doing their outlets for money, right? Like for me, that's extreme sports. For multiple other entrepreneurs I know, I mean, there's this dude who's dominating locally in our market right now that I'm friends with and is obsessed with pickleball, like is going to go like national championships in pickleball, right? And that's because that same obsession he has in his business, he's applying to his external outlet. He's not getting paid for pickleball. He's doing that as an outlet. I'm talking about straight up like side hustles. It is like, it's a big risk. So I bring this up because it's like strategy is the number one thing that holds people back from taking action on their dreams and their goals. Oh, I'll wait till the times are, I'll wait till the strategy is clear. Same thing applies for established business leaders. I'll wait to take action on this until the strategy is clear, right? I want to make sure the strategy is clear first. Most companies don't have strategy problems. Most companies have execution problems, right? Most entrepreneurs don't have strategy problems. Most entrepreneurs have execution problems. Most artists don't have strategy problem. They have execution problem. Because the more you execute, the more you become a better strategist, right? If I've only executed one thing in my life well, I'm not going to be a good strategist because I'm not going to have reference experience on what works and what didn't work through my action. I always say, the market never lies. The market will give you real-time feedback for everything that you do, right? The market is the best teacher on planet Earth, right? So instead of saying you're going to wait for the time, every minute you say you waited for the time could be a minute you could have sold a product and service in the real world and gotten real market feedback from that product or service. Nothing replaces that. No amount of reading or waiting or brainstorming is going to replace the power of a real marketplace speaking back to you, a real customer speaking back to you on something you did for them, right? That is the challenge with today's society, is we're putting way too much focus on strategy. There are Harvard Business Review articles on like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages on strategy and almost no pages on execution, right? Like, execution is the hardest thing to conquer because it's the most boring, right? Execution is the most painful thing to master. Execution is it's boring. I mean, that's why if you're to see like what I do throughout the week, it's not like, oh, Bill's an entrepreneur, he's on jets and he's, no, dude, I show up the same place every day and I'm trying to execute every day. I'm trying to execute on a predetermined strategy that I've had for the last 7 years, right? And every day is an execution battle, not a strategy battle. And by the way, the only strategies that you should ever implement are strategies that came straight from your customer's mouth, right? That is customer-led innovation. In business, like, prevent yourself from brainstorming what you think people will want, right? Better yet, your customers' actions are the best indicators of what you should do, right, in business, right? LinkedIn has a great example of this. The founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, he founded LinkedIn, and when people were logging into LinkedIn, the main page, they were abandoning the website. So he started looking into like why that was happening, and he actually put up, I think it was like an eBay ad or something, or maybe it was Craigslist, and people came to like an office, and he literally paid them like $100 for him to stand behind their back, over their shoulder, and watch them log into LinkedIn.com and watch them try to put in their information and watch them try to log in. And within like one day of him looking at people over the shoulder, he was very clearly able to realize, oh, wow, the reason LinkedIn's not working is because people are having problems logging in, right? It was like hard for them to validate their name and their email and all that. Change that one thing and utilization of LinkedIn skyrocketed, right? And that innovation didn't come from him brainstorming in a meditative pose for some perfect strategy that came from his mind. No, who'd it come from? His customer, right? His customers drove that innovation. And that's boring. It's much more fun to just brainstorm all day, right? And I envy careers where that's a thing. Like, maybe being a movie director, that's what it's like. I mean, I would assume that movie directors follow a formula based on what works, based on history in terms of climaxes, the initial storyline, the character introduction in the beginning. I'm sure that the best directors on planet Earth, they're not just, for their first movie ever following no best practices, right? Typically, the best movie directors in their first films, they're following a process of what works, and over time, they're becoming their own innovators. They're following that same process. Study someone else's methods, mix and match from other people's methods, and then finally you invent your own. And the people who invent their own become the geniuses, right? But what you realize is that most of what people teach in these business and entrepreneur books is wrong. It's okay to be scrappy. It's okay to be aggressive. It's okay to set unreasonable goals. It's okay to focus on action over strategy. It's okay to speak directly to others. It's okay to do things your own way. And it's okay to not follow someone else's method. And, most of these things you're never going to read in a business or entrepreneur book or, success book. You're going to see, there is a 5-step system. And if you follow my 5-step system, then you'll get rich quick. Woohoo, right? Bullshit. It's just not how it is. It's all vague. And Elon once said, entrepreneurship is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss. Damn right. That's exactly what it's like. There is no perfectly clear prescription. There will never be a perfectly clear step-by-step plan for every single thing that's going to happen in advance of it happening. And if that is what it is, then you're probably not doing things that are innovative, right? Like, if you're not doing things that are new, like for our business, for example, we're inventing a new business model. We're inventing a merge of digital marketing with business coaching, with fractional CFOs, fractional COOs, and bookkeeping all under one umbrella. And there are new problems that present as a risk of this business model. Sometimes clients sign up for the wrong mix of solutions because of how many different solutions we have. Sometimes they don't know what percent of what they're paying us is going towards what solution. They don't know how to track ROI separately for each of the things they buy for us, right? So if one thing doesn't produce an ROI, some clients will attribute that to everything, right? And if one thing is producing them an amazing ROI, then they'll attribute that to everything, right? So all of these things make it like a harder problem to solve, our business, right? So what am I going to do? Give up? Just, go to a more predictable business? Hell no. If you're going to do new things, you're going to have to solve new problems, and you're going to have to rely on your own intuition a little bit more. So form your own beliefs around what success looks like in your leadership, in your entrepreneurship. Trust your inner instincts and go all in. And don't worry about being liked. Worry about being impactful. So I hope you got value from this one. Most of what you read in the books, especially if it's not by a practitioner, is wrong. And I would set a goal for you. Only read books from people who are 20 times further than where you're currently at. Make that a rule for yourself. You can use ChatGPT to help you with this. Ask ChatGPT, hey, give me 10 books that are written from, and an example I use for myself is written from founder CEOs of service-based companies doing over $100 million to $1 billion in annual sales, right? That then it produces a list for me, and then I'm able to make sure I'm only educating myself from practitioners, not from theorists, right? So make sure, if you can choose between learning from a practitioner or a theorist, always learn from the practitioner, because the battle scars the practitioner has will always beat whatever amount of strategy or theory you learn from the theorist, okay? So I'll see you in the next episode. Don't trust everything you read. Trust your inner voice. All right, I'll see you in the next one.